Okay, Friday, 12th of June, 2026. So Adrian's daily vlog, sharing smart stuff men should know. Autochthony. Now this is a very interesting concept I've come across very recently. And this video is more about raising awareness of this concept and the thing behind it, because what we see in the West right now is a bit of a crisis of meta-identity, where the idea of being international and being borderless has been the predominant idea, and instinctively it was the idea to go for, being international. But then I always thought instinctively, what's the opposite of that? What's the opposite? And it's nationalist, it's localism, it's nationhood, things like that. But that's nice, but let's go deeper into what is the concept in terms of anthropology, or in terms of, we could say, philosophy in some way. What's that phrase? What's that concept? And I came across it by chance. Autochthony, which you could say is being rooted, being connected to a place, in quite literal, an actual physical location, a ground, a space, territory, a land. And I thought, well, to what extent does that apply to me? And I thought about, oddly enough, England, by amazing coincidence, have the shirt on, it's the World Cup, and Wales and Scotland and Ireland. We could say both North and, Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland, we could say in a way. And I thought, that's interesting. And I just wanted to raise awareness of that concept, being native to a land. And that actually has some very primal roots in it with regards to this territory, this land, this boundary, this soil. And I'm sure if we go down into the real science and nitty-gritty behind it, it'll be down to the nature, it'll be down to the soil chemicals and how, we are evolved and adapted to certain kinds of foods based on the climate and things like that, in a real nitty-gritty way, some real hard sciences. I'm sure there'll be things behind it, but that's interesting. We're adapted to this particular heat range, not that one, not this one, things like that. And we like this kind of weather, but not that kind of weather, things like that. I'm pretty sure there'll be some interesting science behind it, but that's interesting, because that concept gives credence and gives more fuel, we could say, to the idea and to the remedy behind the crisis of a meta-identity happening in the West, as in who we are, what we are, and recognizing that, putting a label to it and acknowledging it and embracing it and understanding it and feeding it and going with that idea. So it's very interesting. And this concept is worth looking further into and studying and understanding deeper. But really just want to raise awareness to it right now, because it's fascinating, that the trail of thought that can lead to, philosophically, practically and beyond, culturally, who knows? Because I do remember back in I think it was late February. I've mentioned before, I was in Whittick Manor in southwest Wolverhampton, and there was this local English, Morris dancers, whatever else, some people doing some ceremony, and they were celebrating something real specific. I've no idea what. I totally forgot what. And I thought, that's rooted in some English culture. And that English culture is not being embellished or supported or encouraged, let's say, by the culture or community or whatever else, or the politics, because it was a small gathering, 50 or so people in that vicinity at most. And I thought, well, if England was truly embraced, or Wolverhampton was truly embraced in its native form, in its autochthony, and I don't know what would the noun of this, what would the adjective of that be? Or Autochthonian, I'm not sure, in its way, then that would have hundreds, thousands of people in attendance, and it would be talked about in the news and whatever else in some fashion. And that kind of feeds this growing narrative of a meta-crisis, a crisis of meta-identity in the West, where the local events, the English things, are not embraced or talked about, but the international things and the foreign things are. Interesting. And then we can go deeper to say that lack of crisis is, it's leading to a loss of telos, and I've talked about that before, but that's a whole other conversation. But it's interesting to point to this word and say that is the anthropological and possibly the evolutionary biological concept behind nationalism. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. It's worth understanding deeper to understand human nature better as well. Not so much, not purely just in a clinical scientific way, but to understand the West better and the direction where it's going as well. Very interesting. Very interesting. But otherwise, Adrian's daily vlog, showing smart stuff men should know. Subscribe for more, and you will see me tomorrow.